Yeah, in Dracula vs. Frankenstein, J. Carrol Naish played the wheelchair-bound descendant of Frankenstein. You had Lon Chaney Jr., who played Groton, the mute with the axe.
Right.
You had little Angelo Rosito, who played the little carny barker and that.
J. Carrol Naish had false teeth, and none of us knew it. And we started the first sound takes, and we heard this click, 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 click. And the sound, and Gary stopped the camera, and everyone looked around, what is that? We turned it up again, click, 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 click. And no one had any idea what it was. And all of a sudden, Lon Chaney Jr. started laughing and pointed out it was J. Carrol Naish and his false teeth. From then on, if you see the movie, you'll hear that little clicking right before he talks.
Now, you did Sadists as well. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a pretty famous biker film.
Sadists, if you haven't seen it, it was one of the first biker films that seemed to really dwell on the fact that bikers were not particularly the nice kids, that they were, portrayed to be just sort of misunderstood. They were, in this film, a bunch of psychopaths. Again, it was directed by Al Adamson. We shot out in the desert in Palm Springs. It was a great time shooting it, and it starred Russ Tamblyn, and Al Adamson's then girlfriend, who later on became his wife, Regina Carroll. And years later, after Al was murdered by a fellow who he had hired to work on his place, do some work on his place. He had been living there and ripping Al off, using his credit cards, and stealing his clothes and things behind his back. And I had talked to Al shortly before he was murdered, and Al told me he was going to confront this guy. And he said, he's been stealing from me, and if he doesn't pay me back, I'm going to throw his ass in jail. 2 days later, Al was dead. It took him 2 weeks to find him. He'd been buried underneath his jacuzzi. Someone had pulled up his jacuzzi, buried him, filled it in, and then put the jacuzzi back. So I asked the cops, how did you know Al was down there? And he said, when a body was missing, and you see a lot of fresh cement, you go, oh yeah, let me see what's under that cement. Anyway, they had me back. This was 20 years later as a witness at his trial. And talk about deja vu. I stayed at the exact same hotel we stayed at when we were shooting Sadists. And I found myself having breakfast in the booth in this little cafe where we used to eat all the time. And every night after shooting, Bud Carlos, Russ Tamblyn, and I would get drunk and sit in that little booth and eat snake. Bud always had a rattlesnake cocktail. We would eat that and drink and sing songs. 20 years later, I'm sitting in that booth, back to testify at the trial of the director of the film. First of all, I went to see a Frank Sinatra movie that was shooting. They had the streets blocked off in Hollywood, was Gower Street. And they said, okay, stuntmen, go to your vehicles. And these 6 gladiators, they looked like gladiators to me, walked to their cars, and they said, okay, stuntmen, start your engines. Action, and off they went, crashing and turning and flipping. And I thought, that's what I want to do. So I lied my way into the stunt business. Jack Nicholson was getting ready to shoot a film in Utah, 2 films actually, and they Ride the Whirlwind and the shooting, and they were looking for a stuntman. So I walked in and said, I'm a stuntman, and Jack didn't know any better, and neither did anyone else, so they hired me, and that's how I started my career. I shot in Dallas over Christmas.
You were the unit manager on that, is that right?
That's correct.
Did you do any stunt work on that at all? Did you?
I did not in that movie. I was so busy as unit production manager because they showed up in Dallas totally unprepared. I didn't have time to even think. And even though Texas is a right-to-work state, the Teamsters Union got very angry because we had not hired any Teamsters for the shoot. And they started to boycott us. Luckily, I had done a film where I had hired the son of one of the Teamsters as an extra on the film. And so that kind of got us by that problem.
In the late 80s, you wrote a film called Rainy Day Friends.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when you saw the last stunt in the clip, the fellow being dragged down the street, That won Best Special Stunt in a Motion Picture at the International Stuntman Awards. We're needed friends. I wrote here, I just moved to Austin. My wife was from Austin. And I wrote the film here. We cast Esai Morales, who had just done Bad Boys with Sean Penn. It also starred Chuck Bailey, probably one of the world's greatest stuntmen. It also starred Carrie Snodgrass. Carrie Snodgrass used to be married to Neil Young. It was about two very unlikely friends who meet up in a hospital, both of them suffering from cancer. And there's a film out now called The Bucket List with Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, about two guys from a cancer hospital that split and go out and do some things they wanted to do before they die. And actually, my film, 20 years ago, Rainy Day Friends, is sort of the same thing. Two people that ordinarily would not be friends hang together because of their illness, and they leave the hospital and go running around doing all kinds of strange, weird things. Bubba Ho-tep was produced and directed by, you know the film, Don Coscarelli. And my good friend, Bob Ivy, a stuntman who played the mummy in Bubba Ho-tep, had done a lot of the Phantasm pictures for Don Coscarelli. And so he was going to play the mummy in Bubba Ho-tep, and the mummy had to be burned a lot, set on fire. And he said, I want Gary to do it. I've done a lot of firework. And he said, before I do the show, I want to make sure Gary's going to be the stunt coordinator. So I did not know Don, but he hired me anyway. And we had a ball shooting that film. I must tell you that we shot it for probably under $400,000. And Don had taken the script to all the major studios, and they all said, get out of here. You know, this is great. Elvis Presley in an old folks home. No one will see this. As you know, it was a huge hit, cult hit. And it takes place in Texas, but we shot it in LA at an old veterans hospital. I just about didn't want to do any stunts. I always went, what am I doing here? But then you get over that and get set to do it. Injuries, I've broken all the ribs on this side in a picture called Savage 7. We were going down, it was a motorcycle movie, and we were going down the highway standing on our seats. And the stuntman next to me lost his bike, and it came over and knocked mine out from under me. I was going down the highway about 40 miles an hour with nothing under me, and all of a sudden I hit the concrete, and all the actors ran over me. Larry Bishop is the first one. Joy Bishop's son broke my ribs. And I had, oddly enough, on Bubba Ho-tep, I broke this leg. If you remember the end of the film, there was a tumble down a hill. We had just staged that and then broke for lunch. And I stepped off a cliff in Malibu, and my leg caught on a root. All stuntmen, almost at work and persevere, have been hurt any number of times. It's the only job in film where you run a risk of getting hurt every time you go to work, and possibly even killed. Every year, one or two people are killed. So I made it a point in the little clip you saw saying that the whole idea is to make it look like this is easy and terrible and whatever, but to do everything you can for safety's sake. We used to rely on the grips and other people to prepare our stuff for us, as stuntmen. Then there was a picture, I'm actually doing A Man Called Uncle, and the guy that was doubling Robert Vaughn before myself, this was a sort of James Bondish TV series, was to run and dive through an empty doorway and just do a somersault and come up on the other side. A grip walked in front of that doorway and spilled the Coke, and ice was all over the floor, and no one checked it out, and the stuntman came, hit the ice, dove headlong into the casing for the door, and he broke his neck. So from then on, stuntmen became actually the safety people on films, and any film that involves action now has to have a stunt coordinator to make sure those things don't happen.